Hey gang, welcome to Ask Me Anything number 4. If you are watching this on YouTube, you're probably thinking, where's 1 through 3? And what the heck is going on? So let me give you a 30-second explanation of what's going on here. So the AMAs were originally a series on my website, jpbouvetmusic.com, and it was just going to be a subscriber thing there. But I realized a couple things, after a couple months of doing this. One, that I'd been neglecting my YouTube pretty hard for a couple years, so I'm making a serious and concerted effort to put more good content here. And the second reason is actually sort of the reason for the first reason, this realization, which is that there are a lot of people, of drummers, of fans of me or the band on YouTube who just, they can't afford to join my website, or they have a private teacher so they have no need to join the website. There's a lot of just good people out there who, for one reason or another, aren't on the website, and I feel a little weird hoarding all my content there. It just feels a little bit too exclusive. So, yeah, I'm just sort of picking at random some AMAs to put out on YouTube so that we can continue this conversation abroad. And the idea on the website was that it had become very like me choosing what I was going to teach and making videos about it. So this makes it a little bit more conversational. The only catch here is that you can only submit questions if you are a member on the website. Mind you, you can start a free membership, pay for nothing, and submit questions. That's totally fine too. But that's my way of giving the website members a little bit more of exclusive access to it, a little bit more of a perk in that way. But I did want to open the window and let the world listen in. So anyways, yeah, it's an Ask Me Anything. I've got some random questions that people send me. I go through them. I organize them all. I try to pick the ones that people ask the most often, or things that I find might be particularly useful to people. So without further ado, let's get into the questions. Okay, question 1 is actually, I need to revise a mistake I made with a question in the last AMA. In the last AMA, someone had asked me about the bembe. How do you count the bembe? And I explained something. It's not really important to know why I'm wrong, but I'm going to give you the correct answer now, because a couple of the people watching the AMA very graciously were like, hey, this is actually how it's counted. Because I was basically saying, I've never really understood why the bembe is called 6/8 Afro-Cuban bembe, because in my mind it sounds like triplets in 4/4. The groove of the 6/8 Afro-Cuban bembe is... Right, so in my mind, I've always heard don't, dack it, don't, 1, 2, 3, 4. And in the last AMA, I was admittedly naively being like, I think it's because it's counted 1 and 2 and 3 and 5 and 6 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 1. But it's not. I'm wrong. You count twice as fast. You actually go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it makes a little more sense, but the point I was actually making in the last AMA sort of stands still, and I'm going to stick to it, in that in my Western life of not being exposed to Afro-Cuban music ever, 6/8 is a very different thing to me. 6/8 has a backbeat on 4, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And everything I've ever done in 6/8 sort of, at least, relatively close. It falls relatively close to that kind of thing. So the Afro-Cuban 6/8, it still helps me to think of it in 4/4, right? I'm not going to change my thinking, but I did want to just offer that revision and be like, okay, that's the way it's actually counted. But I still find it very difficult to think that way. So in my mind, I'm thinking 1 into 2 into 3 into 4 into 1 into and a 4 and a 1 and a 4, and that is only okay. I'm going to fully justify this, is that it's only okay because I don't play any real Afro-Cuban music. I would never will, most likely. I never have. I've never played in an authentic Afro-Cuban band, but that groove, from that stemmed off all sorts of cool stuff, right? That's a feel that I play in a lot, but to me it has morphed into just 4/4 with triplets, right? So when I'm playing this kind of stuff that I'll show you, it really all came from my studying the Afro-Cuban and expanding that, even though in the beginning I never apparently understood how the Afro-Cuban was supposed to be counted. So if I start playing this kind of stuff, right, so none of that would sound good in the context of an actual Afro-Cuban band, but that's stuff that I've developed that started with that. So anyways, that's my full justification of me just counting that wrong my whole life, and I'm going to continue to do so. But the original question was something like, how do you count the bembe? So now you have the actual way, and then what I have found useful as I've branched off that. That's question one. Question 2. Have you doubted yourself to a point where you almost considered giving up music? Yeah, kind of, which is surprising to some people, but it was actually like 3 years ago? 4 years ago at this point. I was just, not happy doing what I was doing, and it was one of those things where I was objectively like, I have it pretty darn good, right? As a musician, and as just a person, I still had it pretty good. I was traveling a ton, 2014, around that time. I had left school 2 years earlier, moved to New York, was playing in some bands, I had launched the website, I was doing clinics and traveling a lot, and there was actually like a key moment where I did at that point I was traveling a ton. That's probably where I met many of you on my travels in Europe, South America, Southeast Asia, tons of traveling, UK a bunch. There was one clinic tour specifically. I got back from the UK, and this is no offense to people in the UK, don't take this the wrong way. It had nothing to do with that. This was where I was at mentally. I got back from that trip, and I was just like, that was not fun. I didn't enjoy any of what just happened. And musically, there wasn't a lot fulfilling going on in that corner of my life. I was teaching a lot of clinics, and I was realizing that if I do too many of these, I get a lot of the same questions. I'm playing the same songs. It's not challenge. It wasn't challenging me at the moment. So a few things happened. I got back from that trip and I was like, man, I'm like traveling the world by myself, making great friends, doing what I love to do. Why am I not happy? So there's that aspect of it, and then there's the aspect of it that I never considered myself like a die-hard artist, which, you have some friends that are like artists, like to the core, like they couldn't exist outside of the arts. If they were forced to, they would just die. I have some friends like that, and I've always really admired that because I think I sort of envy it. Like I've always been like a jack of all trades. Like I could do other things, I thought. When I was looking at colleges, I was like, maybe I'll go to architecture or graphic design school. I don't know if I would have been any good at those actually, but I at least had other interests. And music I was good at the drums, but I wasn't good at music, you know what I mean? So those things combined, I was like, man, maybe like if I'm not, the artist here, am I going to be happy doing art my whole life? Like being an artist kind of? So anyways, I started messing around with other stuff. That's when I did Give Laugh Groove, that big fundraiser, which was an amazingly fulfilling thing to do. It was a big fundraiser thing. We raised like $100,000 and $40,000 or something like that, and packed 100,000 meals to be sent to kids in need. But at that point I was like, man, maybe I'm going to become like, I was thinking like, maybe this is going to be like a festival and I'm going to run the festival and I'm going to do it every year and it's going to be like a summer thing. And I was starting to like, my brain was sort of shifting gears of like, wow, like this could be a thing. And I was like, wow, cool. Like maybe that's my next frontier, like I'm a businessman. I didn't know what I was doing, for the record. And then, so I had like a year where I was really unhappy doing music. And looking back, I realized that part of it is I didn't have a musical outlet that was super fulfilling. I was playing in some bands at the time, and they were cool. They were with friends and stuff, but it was like really rare activity. You know what I mean? Like we'd spend like a month doing something every year, and we'd record an album and then like be not doing anything for a while. So it wasn't continually fulfilling, which is kind of, later on down the road, this is what sparked the creation of Childish Japes. That's that thing for me that I love with all my heart and is my artistic outlet. So, yeah, in that period, I was bummed. But what's funny is what actually happened is after this year, after that big Give Laugh Groove thing, I went on another trip somewhere. I actually don't even remember where, off the top of my head. And I got back, and it just settled on me. I was like, yeah, I'm being an idiot. Like, life is, like, it had been a great trip. And I was like, I'm basically trying to create myself a full-time job at home when I have the best job ever traveling around doing other stuff that I would much prefer to do. So there was that. I sort of re-fell in love with drums after that. I was really playing just for me. I was practicing a lot, and I was finding things that I was really excited about. I think after that, I really feel like I started to find my voice on the instrument, like my own style, my own kind of thing. So things just, it melted for a year, and I was like, I'm going to not be happy with this. And actually, since then, it's just been, I think I've been enjoying my life more and more with every month that passes, which is really fantastic. So for me, long story short, it was a lot of getting in touch with what do I actually want to do, what do I actually love, and trying to really detach from what is everyone else doing. Like what musically, I mean, like what. Because I would see people like getting tours. I would see people doing things that I wasn't doing, playing a bunch of shows around New York with everyone, whatever it might be, and I would feel like why am I not doing that? I should be doing that. But really, I didn't want to do that. So it was like detaching myself from what other people want to do, trying to define what I want to do, and just pushing toward that. So for me, that is having a musical outlet that is true and pure, which is Childish Japes for me. And that frees up a bunch of mind space, because then I have my educational side of my life, which I love, and I've sort of fallen in love with more deeply now. It's almost like I needed the balance. And then there's the other part of it that's like touring with artists, like Generation X, the little things I did with subbing for Periphery, other artists around town here, whatever it might be. Those are like the three facets now. And it was just a long process of figuring out what I didn't want to do and what I did want to do. And that's kind of how that year came and went. For better, I would say. Not for better, for worse, but just for better. Question 3. You mentioned in a clinic a few years back, you spend a lot of time playing drums without music. How do you sustain the concentration and enjoyment to do this through what I guess includes difficult sessions? Where does the fire in the belly come from, in a nutshell? This is a really interesting question. And something like this difference I'm highly aware of. Like I teach a lot of students who only play along to music or only play to a metronome. And when they're left with silence and told to fill it, and they don't know what to do. So and to reinforce whatever he's referring to, it's true, I almost never ever play along to music. And I very, very rarely play along to a click. But this isn't, I'm going to just offer, my experience, not necessarily instruction here, because everyone does learn differently, and everyone has different goals with drumming. If your goal is to just be the sickest cover band drummer in the world, playing along to music, I really can't see the harm in it. But if you want to develop your own voice on the instrument and start doing things that are unique and different that you haven't heard other people play, there's no way you'll ever get to that point without exploring on the kit by yourself. Because those things, you don't create the equation and you're like, I haven't seen this done, and if I do it in this time signature at this tempo, it'll be something I've never seen. It's not that kind of thing. It's like you're exploring and you're just stumbling into things. You think, this is cool, and you get really obsessed with one thing. You're like, oh man, ghost notes. Wow, I love ghost notes. And then you just obsess over them so hard that eventually you're doing ghost note stuff that most people around you aren't doing, right? So that's kind of how your style develops. It's this very natural sort of just bumping into new ideas. But you can't be doing that unless you're exploring on the kit. So for me, a lot of what I do when I'm practicing is I set like boundaries or rules, and I improvise within the rules, right? So I have a goal that I'm trying to accomplish, and but really the goal incorporates being able to improvise in this setting. I call it a setting. Um, and if that's my goal, then I need to be improvising to be practicing, but I need to have a focus to the improvisation. So an example would be like like right now, I'm working on my left foot timekeeping a lot. So like doing really slow timekeeping, like right, or like fast upbeat timekeeping. So I need to keep working on that. But various types of left foot stuff that is kind of pushing me in different directions. But as you can hear, like what I need to do is improvise. And sometimes I find like a specific pattern that I can't do comfortably. And I will stop and I'll do the pattern over and over again while that's going. I'm not improvising, I'm just doing a boring exercise. And I just do that until it starts to feel good, and then try to mix it in with the other stuff that I've been working on. This is a huge part of my practice, is like learning a new piece of vocabulary by doing it technically, and then trying to make it play nice with the other stuff that I know that I can already do. So you've got your comfort zone, you've got new stuff, and you need to work on the new stuff by itself, but then spend an equal amount of time trying to make it play nice with everything else. So just overusing the idea and mixing it with everything else, right? So if I use singles and paradiddles a ton in my improv with my hands, and now I'm working on putting kick drums in, it's like, okay, I do some kick drum exercises. I go right, left kick, right, left kick, right, left kick. And then I'm like, okay, singles, 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 right, left kick, like paradiddles. Singles, paradiddles, right, left kick, right, left kick, right, left kick. And I just keep forcing it in there. I might mess up a bunch, but that's sort of the process I take. And it just never ends, because there's always a new idea that you can add to the comfort zone. And hopefully your comfort zone eventually is so big that it starts overlapping other comfort zones and other time signatures or other tempos, and then you can play anything, right? I don't know if we ever get there, but that's kind of how I picture it. So for me, the joy of drumming is just, is like letting yourself play some stuff, you know, because it's funny because we can only think about things so quickly, right? And so much of our life is autopilot, right? It's subconscious. My hand's moving right now. Even the words I'm saying, I can hardly really think about it until after they've come out. So drumming, it's the same thing. Like a lot of times you're sort of watching yourself play. And there's no greater joy to me than thinking what I'm playing is cool. Like I'm kind of in the passenger seat, like, wow, this sounds really cool. And you're kind of just along for the ride. And you know what you're doing, but you're not thinking about what you're doing. And it's cool. I just want to like it. So that's my goal, is to just it be freedom here. So if that's my goal, then playing along to music almost has nothing to do with it. You know what I mean? I love playing along to music, but I want to feel this feeling I'm feeling free here when I'm playing music with people. So yeah, it's just different, you know? Different for everyone, but for me, I'm trying to make music here that I think is sick. So whether or not there's music there, that to me, that's how I can give a better musical contribution to a group, through like Childish Shapes. I can give better ideas, and as a trio, we can sound like a big full sound if everyone's ideas are super musical. So I'm not just playing all the time. I mean, maybe sometimes I am, but maybe, you know, I don't just play like regular grooves. I'm trying to think of a musical part, right? So yeah, that's kind of where my desire comes from. When you say, where does the fire come from? That's it. Like, that's what I hear in my head. That's what I want to be able to do, and that's what I enjoy doing the most, is riding that wave of ideas that are just flowing out. And I fall and stumble all the time, but when you get up, if you've ever surfed, when you get up for those 5 seconds, it's like, dang, this is cool. It's worth it to sit out there for another hour and try. It's a forced metaphor because I've never got up surfing. I've tried twice, but I haven't actually succeeded. People tell me it's great when you get up. Anyways, that's question 3. I feel like actually before I move on, the other small idea that's relevant there, and this is what I'm realizing, it's kind of a newer idea in my vocabulary. It came to me teaching someone about something sometime, but it's this idea of rhythmic vocabulary. And rhythmic vocabulary is something you want to be forever expanding. And this is like, to me, this is one of like bedrock principles of being able to create music on the drum set. Because really the only tool we have, the main tool we have is rhythm. So your rhythmic vocabulary, like someone with a shallow or a small rhythmic vocabulary will get stuck playing the same beats over and over again, right? Doom, got, doom, doom, got, doom, got, doom, doom. Play a new beat, doom, got, doom, got, doom, got, doom. Play a new beat, got, doom, got, doom, got. Play a new beat, and they like start repeating themselves. Like, dang, do I only know 3 beats? But this is the weird thing. If I show them a beat, they can play the new beat, but they wouldn't have thought of it themselves. Which is just like our speaking, right? We all have a bigger listening vocabulary than we do a speaking vocabulary. It's the same with rhythmic information, right? You can comprehend way more than you can play, but you want to get those as balanced as possible so that those things are options to you to play without someone needing to show you it, without you needing to read it, without you needing to think very hard about it, just having it come out. So that's rhythmic vocabulary, and it's just a matter of, I'm going to make it sound simple, but it's a lifelong journey, getting away from the patterns that you always play and always saying, what's a new version of this? What's a new pattern that I'm not doing? And that's really hard to do if you don't know what you're doing, which is why learning some basic reading, basic counting, those types of things are really priceless, because that's your guide to expanding your own rhythmic vocabulary. Anyways, question 4. When is the new Childish Japes album coming out? And does it have, or is it the Perth sessions that you told me about? Yes, we did record it in Perth, and with Brody Simpson, fellow Minor artist, who's such a sick drummer and such a cool guy. It was a great session. I made a blog about it. After the album comes out, you'll see it. But the album is due out sometime. I'm gonna say super vague just to make sure we don't set a deadline and not meet it. But summer 2018. So just really a couple months away. I'm gonna tentatively float out June. But since we're currently in album planning, release process planning, the exact date's actually not set. Probably June. But it's going to be really cool. It's featuring Dave Vivas, the singer, on the whole album. It's 8 tracks. He was the singer on the first song on the first album. And I'm really, really proud of this album. It's very meaningful to us, and it's really cool music. It's kind of like Radiohead meets RX Bandits, if you've heard of RX Bandits. So yeah, that's one of the next Childish Japes albums coming out. At what point do you stop practicing? This is an interesting question. Okay, this is an important one. Flagging this one. This was sent to me this week, and I was like, this has to be in this AMA. At what point do you stop practicing rudiments every single day and start focusing on more complex ideas that incorporate rudiments into grooves and exercises? So, this is a topic that comes up a lot with students and at clinics and everywhere. And there is this obsession that some people have, or it's really like they're misguided into thinking that spending all day practicing rudiments is a good idea, is the best use of their time. And it might be a good idea at some parts of your drumming path, but like it's not usually the most useful part of your time. And to me, if you're a snare drum player in a marching band or something, obviously rudiments is probably your best friend. But we play this thing, and all 4 of our limbs have to be involved for us to play it well at all. And it's all about control. this instrument, think about this. When you boil it down to the absolute basic function that's going on here, you want to be able to control when your four limbs trigger and how hard they trigger. Right? That's all of drumming, basically. So we get, like, right, rudiments is like we could practice them on a kit, or we could practice them on a pad, or we could find a way to bring them to the kit. And in my mind, I'm always thinking, like, why not practice three things at once that you definitely need, as opposed to one thing that you need, like paradiddles, and then having to come and then work on independence, and then work on coordination, and then work on kit mobility, when you could be doing all that at the same time. So I want to just offer people a cautious warning here, like really critically think about what you're doing for a practice routine. And if you're just doing rudiments for a huge part of it, think, why am I doing rudiments? Maybe you have a great reason. I don't remember the last time I sat down and played rudiments, period. Maybe if I'm warming up for a show and all I have is a practice pad, I'm going to obviously play rudiments. What other choice do you have? But even then, I'm more likely to imagine I'm playing a beat and actually have my kick and my left foot going and be playing some interesting stuff on the side of the pad and the snare drum of the pad, whatever you want to call it, and imagining toms and stuff, hit your leg, whatever. That is stimulating your mind on a much more useful, in a much more useful way. Because you could do paradiddles, or you could make paradiddle grooves, right? And that could morph into 1,000 different grooves. I mean, I have a paradiddle series on the website where you take that and then 4 other permutations of paradiddles, and you make infinite grooves. And they actually end up sounding very cool. No offense to the paradiddle groove, but it sounds like a paradiddle groove. But when you get into 30-second note stuff and moving the kick drum around, you get into... That's all paradiddle grooves, right? You just have to take them one step further, start them with your left hand, right, where you're putting the kick drum. But that, I was literally just playing a paradiddle, starting with my left hand. Right, and you expand from there. So if that's possible with paradiddles, you'll never find that by playing them on a pad. Make it useful, make it, incorporate. So much of drums is balance, independence, coordination. So bring those things into play. And if you're doing it for a warm-up, go ahead and put it on the kit. Warm up your brain in more than one way. If you're doing paradiddles, why not go... Why not start working on that left foot timekeeping you've been neglecting your whole life and go... Right, groups of 3 into paradiddles, keeping time here. We can think of these things all day. Whether they're a warm-up or they're meant to be working on your hands, I would say that it's more beneficial to work on the drum set than it is to work on the snare drum, because that's only 1/8 of this instrument most of the time. So that's my deal about rudiments and practice pad work in general. If you could be doing it on a kit, you should have a very good reason for not doing it on the kit, if you're not doing it on the kit. Because it's way more useful to do it on the kit and get a feel for the kit and work on all that stuff. I won't harp on it any longer. Yeah, okay. Number 6, how to go around the toms fast. Really quick tip here. I kind of wish I left my rack tom on now, but we'll just go between these two and maybe this one over here. But small tip. Okay, so if we're going from snare drum to floor tom, if we're going to go that kind of thing, pay attention to the difference between these two things, right? right? The difference is where the accents are. So the reason going around the toms like that is hard is that you have to move to the tom and hit it really hard if you're accenting on the tom. Accent, accent, it's hard to move your hand fast over there and accent it at the same time. So what you do is you accent on the snare drum before you leave. You're accenting on the way out. The last thing you do on the snare drum is accent. So you accent, accent, see ya, boom. Which just makes it a little bit easier. So. That helps. The other thing is, it's a lot about motion here, efficiency of motion. So I've seen some people, I've helped a lot of people with this specific problem, and what they end up doing, especially when they've got a rack tom here, it's like their elbow kind of like stays in this, like their, no, let me describe that this way. Their wrists kind of stay in the same place, and like their whole torso has to turn, or their whole shoulder has to turn. And if you think about watching me kind of go back and forth here, there's not a whole lot of movement happening actually. My torso can pretty much stay where it is, and you get a little turn of the wrist here. You get this coming over here, a little turn to come back maybe, maybe not so much with the left hand here because it's got to go way over here, but if you were moving to the side snare, this can turn over, this can turn a little bit. So it's really like keeping your elbow on your side and doing as little motion as possible. That makes it way easier, obviously just because you have less of you to move to get to the right place. To do this is hard, to do this is really easy. I don't even know where I know this from, but I don't even know if it's accurate. But I thought someone told me once that Vinnie Colaiuta used to say that playing drums is like dealing cards, right? You never have to lift your elbows to deal cards, right? It's maybe forward, but never out. So that's what I kind of keep in mind when I'm trying to move around the kit fast. And when I try and play, like if I play, like pay attention to the elbows kind of stay where they are, and so for the most part, you want to be relaxed here, and yeah, hopefully that helps move around the toms a little faster. This is, okay, so I just threw this in there because I get asked a lot about Berklee, and I'm actually not going to talk about it here because it's a deep topic, and I actually, if people reference the video I did about the Berklee audition, advice and preparation stuff, more than anything else I've ever done, strangely enough. I meet people everywhere. They're like, man, I watched that video when I was, trying to get into college. I didn't get in, you schmuck, you lied to me. No, I get mostly positive comments about it. But that, I actually feel somewhat of an obligation to do a follow-up to that, because that was me immediately having left Berklee or still in Berklee. I think I had just dropped out. And it's interesting because I'm, what year is it? 4 or 5 years now out of college. And I have so much more perspective on the experience now that I've been a working musician and that I've watched my fellow Berklee friends and that network sort of like move past that into the real world pretty deeply now. And some people have succeeded and some people have failed and some people have disappeared and some people have become super famous. And I have so much more perspective on that whole experience now, and having sort of counseled many students who have wanted to go there or who have wanted to do music professionally and not go there or whatever it might be. So I do feel obligated to do a follow-up. I feel like there's another sort of piece of the puzzle that is missing, and it's just a bit of a deeper look at the pros and cons of the experience. So I'm just going to let you know that I'm going to be doing that video somewhat soon. So if you've been sending questions to me about Berklee and I've been neglecting you, that's why. And I'm I'm going to talk about my thoughts on it, and also I hope to answer a few questions that people have specifically sent me in the end of the video. So we'll just hit a bunch of those sort of AMA type things at the end of that. But yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you for the great questions. Again, if you're interested in submitting questions, once you've created any type of free or paid membership on jpbouvetmusic.com, if you scroll to the bottom of any page, you'll see a Submit an AMA Question button, and you can submit it there. So anyways, thank you for listening. It means the world to me that you guys are here, and it's an honor to have an audience to speak to about things, and I'm grateful that we have enough in common to find some common ground and share drums. So anyways, have a great day. See you soon.